Welcome back to another episode of the Casual GM podcast. I am your host, Drew, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Doing fantastic, Drew. How about yourself?
I'm actually quite good. I'm enjoying it. We've got some what I think are extremely fun and interesting topics today, and I'm anxious to jump into them. So,
that sounds like a plan. Where do you want to start?
Well, this is our first podcast since the season ended where we don't have a game to talk about. So we were discussing what to do for today's episode, and you had mentioned that hey Zakwa, you had mentioned that a friend of yours, was it, or a coworker?
My brother.
Your brother, even
yes.
better, had sent you a trade proposal that he wanted your opinion on, and then you asked me what my opinion was of it, and I thought it was so interesting as we were discussing it that I thought, well, we should probably save this for the podcast.
Let's do it. All right. Well, so before we get into that, I can share my screen because I've got the screenshot up of the trade proposal that my brother was talking about. First, we did get new subscribers, so thank you for everybody, and welcome to the crew, Herb Nickel Jr. So that was awesome. But let me share my screen real quick, and we will take a peek at the trade proposal that my brother sent me. Let's see if I can zoom in.
Yeah.
All right. So the unique thing about this was not necessarily that we traded out of 6. The thought that he was asking me was, if we trade out of 6, what if we took future draft value instead of trading within our draft class? So instead of trading for maybe their first round or their second round this year, what if we just look at future draft capital? So in this particular trade, we traded the number 6 to Miami. We got next year's first, next year's second, and then 25's first and 25's third. So let's talk about two different things. Number one, total value, because I know you like doing the points thing and talking about, like, is this a winner on the value side? And then also on the whole concept of, how do we want to prioritize the value, the assets that we get back? Do we want to prioritize, we need as many assets this year, or do we want to look at maybe spreading those assets out as different contract renewals and 5th-year options expire and all that kind of stuff? So I'll let you start with whichever one you want to talk about first.
Okay, thank you. So, and I'm glad you said the second thing, because that's where I want to start. So,
all right.
I think that one of the great things that Brad Holmes has done for the Detroit Lions is he has hit on so many draftable players that he's drafted, prospects, who have already contributed, that I think that they are a full class ahead of where they should be if you were to just get the average number of starters out of a 7-pick draft class. So in his first class, we all know Penei Sewell, Aleem McNeil, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then you can argue whether or not there are any additional contributors from that class that might be worthy of second contracts. So, like, jury's still out on Muzarike, jury's still out on Derek Barnes, but Ifeanyi Melifonwu, so what is it about, who amongst those groups are likely to get 7 second round deals?
Sorry, I was going to make it bigger than our faces ended up covering up the trade. So.
It's the worst thing.
I know, the worst.
So then what I think what's crazy is that he did an even better job in this last year's class. Of course, there's Aiden Hutchinson, and then of course you traded up for Jameson Williams, who, let's be honest, the jury's still out on, but looks like there's a lot there to work with. Kirby Joseph, Josh Paschal contributed in big way. James Houston, Malcolm Rodriguez, like all of these guys, that's 5 players, that are either going to contribute in a major way right now, or have the potential to really be a cornerstone of the team, mostly in Jameson Williams, in the 2023 season. So that's, if you just take 3 from the first class, you might have 7 guys that you are looking at as second contract players on this team. And the reason the reason that I ended up talking myself into why I liked this trading out of 6, is twofold. Number one, I don't think that where you want to be picking in this draft is 6. I think you want to be picking in the top 4, and it really falls hard from tier 1 to tier 2. And I would rather pay less money for a tier 2 player in this class than I would the money that you're going to pay them at 6. And the reason why I would trade out is I don't know that there's a good fit for the Lions at 6. I think you either have to overdraft somebody or you're speculating. So that would be my first thing. And the second thing is just the overall value from what this pick was. Like, this package is akin to what trading into the top 5, top 3 has looked like for, in previous picks over the last 10 years. So this value from this pick could, like, this proposed trade could be immense. Hey, One Pride.
What's up, One Pride?
So when you couple together the value with the fact that I think they're going to miss out on, like, either an elite player that they can add to their roster or have leverage in order to, have someone trade up for, like, possibly the 3rd quarterback on the board. Like, I don't know that those opportunities are going to be there for the Lions at 6. So if you were to be offered a package like this, then I think that becomes the best way to use that pick to add overall value to the team. And what it's doing is it's giving you one more year of breathing room, because the trajectory that the Lions are on right now in the next 2 to 3 years, they're going to have to start extending these guys. And there's going to be 2 or 3 guys a year that are going to demand top of the market contracts, second contract extensions.
Yeah.
And your cap is going to go from, like, manageable to you're maxed out and there's no more flexibility. So to buy yourself a year to add in whatever this package of picks could add to this team, I think is quite valuable. Also, like, it would provide flexibility in 2 future years. It's basically the Goff trade all over again. Like, you would get to restart with a new Goff trade minus Jared Goff, basically.
Yeah.
And that's worked out really well for them.
I mean, I was a little mixed on this because my first thought was I want to win as quickly as possible. And trading an asset that I could turn into if you're drafting in the first round, you expect them to be a starter. If you're drafting number 6, you're definitely expecting them to be a starter and contributor.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, taking somebody that is expected to be a starter and contributor right away and go, I'm going to trade you for something I'll get to next year and the year after wasn't super enticing to me, because, like, I want to get better right now. This is a great window. But, like, to your point, when we start looking at contracts, when they start to expire, when we need to start getting renewals, having a little bit of wiggle room. And it's not like we don't have another pick, right? In this draft, we've got, like, 5 picks, 6 picks in the top 100.
Yeah,
we got a lot of picks. So postponing one isn't going to necessarily slow us down like my initial thought process was kind of headed towards.
So let's talk about that, because we have at least one example staring us literally right in the face. So if you give up the 6th pick, what could your draft look like this year? And I think we have an example right here. Now, they're using PFF's big board. I'm not so certain. In years past, I've been very pro PFF's, like, top 100. I'm less with it this year. It differs pretty heavily from what my opinion of the players are this year.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, let's just assume that, like, we're drafting those positions as opposed to the actual players at those positions. Then I think that this is, a pretty good representation of what the Lions could be looking like, especially in the top 100, is you need another cornerback. You could add an edge player. It's not where I would go, but you could. Linebacker would certainly be on the table. And then, of course, interior defensive line might be the biggest need that the Lions have going into the offseason. So what I tell myself is they are not going to leave the defensive tackle position open. Hey, Don. They are not going to leave the defensive tackle position open heading into the draft. And like, you must draft a defensive tackle to have someone there to play that position come week one. That's not going to happen. So all of these positions are going to be filled heading into the class, heading into the draft. And then you're going to take either the best value or like the guy that's on top of your board, or use the pick in a trade or whatever the situation presents you with. So like, if the Lions walked away with players at those positions, I think we would be pretty well situated to take another step forward in 2023's year. And like, they've already, Holmes and Campbell have already come out and said like, we are wanting to make the playoffs. Like, basically, I think Holmes said playoffs or bust. That's kind of the mentality of where we want to be. We want to keep getting better. So, if this team picks off where it did last year, then I think that if you add just quality players on cheap contracts at like these positions, as highlighted by your friend's mock draft, your brother's mock draft, and we get this trade on top of it, then you're looking at doing something like this for the next 2 years. And then by that time, Penei Sewell is up for his contract extension.
Decker, right? He might be at the end of where his
right.
Might be replaceable at that point. And we never know. I mean, this is Miami. You never know where they're going to draft.
Right.
But they may have a Rams year. We might get lucky and have another thing where we get a future pick and they don't tank, but they drop off a cliff for injury reasons or whatever.
Right.
And all of a sudden this becomes hell. It could be another number 6 pick.
Right. Exactly. And that is what happened in the RG3 trade. Like, the RG3 trade was someone moved up to 2, but they ended up giving 3 future firsts. And like what the first round pick is going to be in the year that you're making the trade, because you switch positions. But then the next year's pick was 22 overall. But then the third first round pick was 2 overall.
Yeah.
So they end up getting exactly the pick that they traded back. It just happened to be 2 years in the future. And you can't possibly know that, right? But that's the risk or reward that you get when you make one of these deals. So let's talk about how we value this. Okay. So everyone is probably at least familiar with the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, which was created by Jimmy Johnson and his staff to try and bring some kind of quantifiable value to a draft pick. So that way you don't get something like the Ricky Williams trade, which was just the most ridiculous, god-awful thing in the history of the league. So so you tried to bring some kind of point value to start quantifying draft capital. And so they came up with some random chart. And then over the years, different groups have altered this chart, used this as a basis, and then for whatever reason tried to like smooth out the numbers a little bit to be more representative of what they think the picks are actually worth, right? But this is where it all stems from. And so I use overthecap.com's version of this chart, which tries to smooth things out for like guys that make second contracts and that kind of stuff. So if you use their number system, the 6th overall pick is worth 2,096 points. Okay. Total of, yeah, you can read that chart. It's available for public viewing. You just got to know where to find them. So this is the Over the Cap one. You go to overthecap.com, you go to the NFL draft portion, and then it's like the 4th option underneath that header, and then it's just there for you like this. So if you look at the 6th pick, it's
the link in the chat.
Yeah, there it is. Mike's got.
I tell you, Drew, you just don't pay me enough for this.
He's well, we don't pay you anything, but
I know that's what I'm saying.
So the 6th pick is worth 2,092 points. Okay, so that's what the Lions would be giving up. So when it comes to a future rounds pick, like in a year in advance, so 2024's draft or whatever, you value those picks as if they are the 16th pick in whatever round you're receiving the pick in. So basically, it's like the total average that pick could be, right? So you're like hedging your bets basically.
Right.
So if you add up what the 16th pick is for a round 1 pick, for a round 2 pick, and a round 3 pick, you do 2 1s, a 2, and a 3. That comes out to 5,006 points. So
like
if you were to give up the 6th
2.5
pick,
times the value.
it's 2.5 times the value spread out over 2 years, 2 or 3 years.
2 years.
2 years. So like
future picks are less valuable though, right? So isn't like I'm trying to remember the way some of that went. Where wasn't it something like a second next year is kind of like a third this year or something like that?
Well, so typically what would happen is like, well, what usually you see like at the end of like in the late rounds is people will give up like, I'll trade you a 7th round pick this year for your 6th next year. So at least from like the middle to late rounds, if you're trading a pick this year, you usually get a better pick, quote unquote, in a future class because you don't know what that is. So like you have to incentivize a team to trade for something that they have right now versus something they will have in the future. Right. So when it comes to any team that's trying to make a trade during the draft, whether that's a move up for a player or a situation like your brother outlined here, there has to be some kind of enticement in order to get the team that you want something from, in this case, the Lions, to be willing to part with it. So if the Miami Dolphins called up the Detroit Lions and Miami Dolphins called up the Lions and said, hey, we'll give you the value for your number 6 picks on a 1-to-1 ratio, the Lions are going to hang up the phone because there's no reason for them to give up something right now for something that's worth the exact same amount a year from now. You know, like what is that saying? Like 1 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush or whatever.
Yes.
So what is the incentive for the Lions to do something like this? Well, you overpay, and they certainly have. But I would say that in my research into like teams moving up into the top 10 picks in the draft, 2 to 3 times what they're acquiring is about the going rate for the ability to move up into that area. So to me, you have to do this. Like, this is a no-brainer. This is like, yep, okay, we'll do it. Let's get the paperwork into the league office. And Miami is on the clock, and they're going to take Miles Murphy or whoever might be on the clock at that point. But this is a no-brainer as far as I am concerned, because this keeps the capital flowing. Cade Coates.
That's my brother. I was messaging him on Facebook. I just added a comment to the live stream on Facebook.
I see.
And apparently it shows up into this chat here. I'm not sure if anybody else can see it, but
gotcha. So anyways, like I think that, and so like I don't know that these players listed at these positions are the players that will be there. We'll have to wait and see, of course, but as far as that trade is concerned, I think that's a slam dunk.
And welcome Mark as well. Malik joining the chat.
Hey Mark, what's going on?
Yeah, I was. So you're. Would you prefer to get trade value? I mean, obviously this was. I mean, points wise is very in our favor, but say it's like 5% or 10% over the value, whatever that ends up being.
Sure.
Would you prefer to get trade assets this year, or would you prefer to do something like this where we stagger them over the next year or 2 years?
So the thing that's enticing about this proposal is that it's worth so much more than the asset you're giving up. And like, I don't really care that it's spread out over the following 2 years. That's a secondary concern for me. Mm-hmm. But it's the overall quality and quantity of picks that you're likely to receive. So like, you're right. You don't know what those picks would be. The Dolphins could win the Super Bowl for all we know, but what I know right now is that I don't think that the draft especially the way that it's perceived at this point to go, aligns very well for the Lions at all at 6.
Yeah.
18 is a different story, but I think at 6, you're looking at either drafting a player at a position that you may not really need them to be at, like edge, or you're going to overdraft somebody at that position because they're going to fit your team so much better. So unless you want to take someone like Will Levis at 6, I don't think that. I mean, if it was Will Levis is on the board, or they were offered this pick, this trade package, I don't know what I would do. Like then we really have a discussion on our hands if that is the case. But if like Jalen Carter and Brian Breesy are off the board, it's like, well, we're going to take a cornerback here, or Anthony Richardson or somebody like that. Then I'm like, give me the picks. Like I'll take Devin Witherspoon at 18 or whatever. So
well, even like One Pride mentions, Stroud declaring helps our value. Like,
yes, it does.
One more quarterback that everybody is going to be clamoring for.
So my thought process, yeah, exactly. So let's just do a really quick thought experiment right now. So the top 6 picks in the draft are, Chicago, Houston, Arizona, Indy's at 4, and Seattle's at 5, right? So like if we just anticipate that Indy trades up with Chicago, because that seems to be the running theory right now, like let's say Indy's picking first. Well, they're probably taking a quarterback. Let's say it's Bryce Young. Houston's probably taking a quarterback. Let's say that's CJ Stroud. Then it's likely to go Will Anderson, Jalen Carter. So then what does Seattle do at 5?
They've got their quarterback, they think, right?
Right. So like, let's say that they take, but one place they could use help is interior defensive line, just like the Lions. So if they happen to go Brian Breesy, what the fuck are the Lions supposed to do?
They've got Will Levis.
You just take a cornerback. I mean, do you invest? I mean, like, I think that the best thing that they could do if the board fell like that, unless there's a trade down option, I think you have to take a quarterback. Because
so say there's no trade down option.
You have
We're
to take
sitting there at 6. We got Will Levis still on the board. You've got I'm already drawing him. You just said his name, kid from Florida.
Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson is still on the board. And we just don't have a trade down offer that is worth its weight. So do you go Will Levis?
I would think that, I mean, if gun to my head today, if the board fell like that, like what I just brought up, or in some combination where those 5 players were off the board, I would take Will Levis. And I would just stash him behind Goff, maybe even for 2 years until Goff's contract's up, depending upon like how well Levis develops. And then I would try and get one of the 5 first-round cornerbacks that are going to go at 18 and just be like, off we go to day 2, or whatever. But like, I'm not in love with that.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I would much rather be like Carter, Breesy, whatever. I mean, but like I think we're in a position this year, like we were in last year, where it's like, boy, I hope the team in front of us messes up so that we can get the guy that we value the most. But I just don't think that Will Anderson or Jalen Carter are going to make it to 6. If one of them does and ends up a Detroit Lion, I know I'm watching the draft at your house. I'm going to freak out.
And we're going to do it live, by the way. We're going to do a live draft party.
We're thinking about streaming us watching the draft this year. Yeah. But yeah, like I might just lose my shit if they end up with like Anderson or Carter. But like if those 5 players that we mentioned, like including Breesy, were off the board, like the 6th overall pick needs to be something that's going to be valuable. And I don't think that there's someone that can bring as much value as one of those 2 quarterbacks if they work out.
So in that scenario, we would draft Levis at 6, let him sit behind Goff for a year, learn the playbook, be available in an emergency, injury situation. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the year, probably cut Goff, right?
Yeah. So
depending on Levis's, I mean, if he doesn't grow and he does kind of the Jordan Love thing where he's like, I'm here. I sat behind, the starter for a while, but I'm just not impressive. Then maybe we we sit him behind him another year or something. But like, assuming some progress there, I would assume we would cut Goff, save the money, and we've got our quarterback of the future on a rookie contract, right?
Yeah, if you fast forward to 1 year from right now, if you were to let Goff go, he'd cost $5 million against your cap, and you'd save $25 million. So that's fine. Like, that's not.
We would save that $25 million every year for the next 4 years compared to our quarterback that we're starting.
Right. So I mean, like, the problem, the cons against Will Levis, like, Will Levis has mobility. He has an absolute cannon of an arm. That's the only reason why I'm selecting him, is that, like, if the Lions are going to commit to speed with Chark and Williams, assuming they bring Chark back, I think that if you don't have a quarterback that can just like flick his wrist and get the ball 50 yards downfield, you're making a mistake in the personnel that's on your team. So Levis checks that box. I think the problem that he has is experience, understanding the concepts. Like, he had no weapons at Kentucky.
Yeah.
So
he's a little bit of a project quarterback in that sense.
Yeah. So I think a full year sitting behind a guy that
clearly needs the playbook.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like,
let's be a professional. Right?
Let's be real. Like, right now, Vegas has odds at Ben Johnson being the number one option for two different teams. So, like, going into the 2023 season, there could very well be a different offensive coordinator who we have no idea who that could be.
Yeah. And I think the offense this year was much more a product of Ben Johnson, his schemes and play calling, than it was the quarterback.
Yeah. And so, like, I wonder if and certainly Holmes and Campbell have said, Jared's played really well. He's he's done everything we've asked him to do. Like, he's our quarterback or whatever. I've never heard them say, like, he's our quarterback for years and years and years to come,
of the future.
Right. But I don't think there would be any, I don't think there would be any problem in that locker room if it was like, we took a quarterback at 6 and, like, it was just flatly stated, like, unless there's some act of God where Jared can't go, he is the number one quarterback on this team. Will Levis is here to develop. Will Levis is here to compete, or whomever it is. And he's here to, learn. And if he gets to a point where we think he's going to be better than our other options, then yeah, we'll go with him. But I don't know that that's going to be, and, like, I think that Goff's resurgence, quote unquote, is in large part to Ben Johnson. And if Ben is not here, can you get rid of the draft? If Ben's not here and Goff regresses, then we could be sitting in a position heading into the 2024 class where it's like, ooh, boy, now we're a playoff team, potentially. And, we're in no position to take a Drake May or a Caleb Williams or somebody like that. Hey, Funky.
So Funky.
Boy, we should have taken at least somebody last year. And, like, the way that it's shaping up is that, like, the 18th pick is almost going to be more valuable to the immediate success of this team that this team has in 2023 compared to the 6th overall pick, even though that's supposed to be the pick that's going to give you more options. So how do you use that pick is the question.
Yeah.
But we spent 30 minutes on this. We were going to spend 10. So.
Well, let's do this. One of the things that we've been doing was we've been taking a look at Brad Holmes' draft classes and looking at individual players and how they compared to the top 3 at their position in their draft class. We looked at Hutch, compared him against Thibodeau and Trayvon Walker. And was that just those two guys?
Karlaftis, wasn't it?
No. I think we added Houston in there at the end.
We did.
And then we did a Malcolm Rodriguez comp, and he stacked up really well against those top linebackers. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that we want to do today is take a look at Amon-Ra St. Brown versus the top 3 draftees of his draft class. I did this kind of stat gathering today after work. Anybody from work watching? But I was just stupid impressed because let's bring him up. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So can you guys see that? Okay.
Let's make it a little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger. All right. So we'll
all right.
We'll do this, and then we'll. You know what we're gonna do? We are going to freeze the first column. So
oh my god,
scroll.
So good.
All right, so we're going to compare Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4th round, 112th overall, against 3 guys. Whoops, that should be 10th overall, I believe. But Jalen Waddle, or I'm sorry, Devonta Smith, I believe was 10th overall.
Sure.
So first round, it just got rid of the trailing 0. So first round, 10th overall. First round, 5th and 6th overall. This is this year's games played. This is this year's snaps. We look at St. Brown. He is, I mean, he's right in there with everybody else and those top guys. Mm-hmm. That's when you think about that draft class, you think about Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and his little Waddle dance, which I think is hilarious, and I love
penguin dance.
Yeah, I love it. It is the best. And then Devonta Smith, who's kind of forgotten about a little bit, but he's still pretty damn good.
Yeah, A.J. Brown casts a pretty big shadow in Philadelphia.
Yeah. So what I did was that because this is 2 years ago, right? They've had 2 years as their sophomore season. So each one of these was a score from year 1 and then year 2. So this first column is the rookie class grade rank. So this is within their rookie class, not against all of the NFL. So Jamar Chase was the highest graded rookie his first year. St. Brown was the second highest graded rookie last year. Waddle was 3rd and Devonta Smith was 4th. Fast forward to this year, St. Brown is the highest graded wide receiver from that class. Waddle's 2nd, Jamar Chase is 3rd, and Smith is 4th.
Coming in a solid 4, just missing the podium.
You know what? If there's anything that we can say about Devonta Smith is he has got consistency. But when we look at them against the overall, like not just their class, but against the NFL, their first year, Chase had a killer season. He was the 8th highest graded wide receiver. St. Brown was the 2nd in the class at 19th overall. But when we look at this year, huge step. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the 4th highest graded wide receiver in the NFL and the 1st in his class. And he's far higher than the other guys. Now, granted, this is only 2 years and whatnot, but that's what I also like to look at is the grades. The first year, he had a 79.4 grade. Chase had an 85. He made a huge jump. Chase, pretty even, that 84, give or take a half, right?
Yeah, those are fantastic scores.
Those are great scores. But look at this jump from 70, almost 80 to 90 in year 2. And he blew by all those guys. And that's the overall for offense overall. The pass, he's a 90.4. He's well over those guys. In the run game, he's a 72. Those end arounds and whatnot. Apparently, they just don't ever run Devonta Smith.
Well, yeah. So, so I guess some of those white guys are going to get like jet sweep motion, like hands off. I like what they, and some of them don't. So, but like I like what they started doing with St. Brown, like putting him in the backfield and like literally just handing the ball off to him. I think that's
he's
awesome.
Killing it. Look at this grade compared to the other guys.
Yeah.
Run block, the dude is doing a good job on some of those where they actually hand it off to not him, and he's killing it on the run blocking. The drop, this is a grade, and then this is the percentage. Look at the grade. His drop grade is a 91, which is great.
Which means he does not drop balls. He does not. Very rarely does he drop a pass.
And then if you actually look at the drop percentage, his first year he was a 2.2% drop, and this past year was 3.6.
Yeah.
Both years far better than anybody else.
Right.
I mean, he is the black hole of pass catching. You throw it there, it just it's caught.
Jared Goff's best friend.
Jared Goff for sure. And then when we start looking at the number, and this is just for this past year, But Devonta Smith actually had 2 games in the 90s. Everybody else had 1. But look at the 80s and the 70s, 6 and 5. He's got 11 games in the 80s and 70s, and most of those are in the 80s. Like, he is killing it. 0 games in the 50 or under 50 essentially. Smith had 1. It was like a 49.8. I felt bad actually having to write that in there. It was so close. And then when we start looking at the actual just objective stats, right?
There they are, Zakwa.
I haven't been paying attention.
No, I've been paying attention for you. Zakwa wants to know what the yards are all about.
So when we start looking at what I would call objective stats, did he catch the ball or not? Like, number of receptions is not subjective; it's objective, right? So he outpaces all the other guys in total number of receptions. He's behind on yards, which isn't super surprising because he's a little bit more of a slot guy, and he doesn't have a guy like Burrow chucking the ball 80 yards downfield. He's got Jared Goff, who chucks it under 20. So, but his yards are still great. He's over 2,000 yards in 2 seasons. His number of touchdowns is right in there with everybody but Chase, who apparently just catches touchdowns. The dude's amazing.
Chase Brown can't. Yeah, he can't. Yeah, Jamar Chase cannot get in the end zone, right?
Yes. So, when you start looking at that, I'm just, as I was typing these out, I'm like, he's killing it. For a 6th round, a 4th round draft choice, he is.
Yes. So St. Brown was selected 100 picks later than Devonta Smith.
Yes.
So to put up numbers in any way, shape, or form that are on par with those guys, you have to, when you look at stuff like this, you have to say, the Lions got a top 15 pick in round 4.
Yeah.
That's just what the production says.
Well, they got a top 10 pick because he's better than Smith in basically every category.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I look at this, I think to myself 2 things. First of all, Chase and Waddle are just different players, right? They are down the field. Their route trees are much different than what St. Brown is going to run.
Right.
The closest route tree to him is Devonta Smith. And he's just better at it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's part of it was that I think it's part of it is his size. I think part of it is he played at USC when USC was in down basically. It hadn't been USC for a while, and I just don't think that there was any kind of narrative that a smaller slot receiver not playing with a quarterback that we're paying attention to at a school. It's the arrow's been pointing down on that school for 3 or 4 years now. There was no reason to get hyped about Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he's just fantastic. And you and I were talking during the week when in 2 years, when his contract's up, he's going to get a contract just like Waddle and
he's going to be a $30 million a year wide receiver
by then. Yeah.
I mean, that's isn't the highest paid wide receiver right now? Isn't that
I'll look it up 1 second.
The guy that went to LA, the Raiders. I'm sorry,
Devonta.
Yeah, Devontae Adams. Isn't he 30 mil?
I got it.
And then in a couple of years, that's just going to be what it is for the best.
Right. So right now it's he's second. So it's Tyreek Hill at an average per year of 30. Adams is 28. Hopkins is still 27 and a quarter. Kupp, AJ Brown, Stephen Diggs, Metcalf, Debo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore. That's the top 10. But and DJ Moore is sitting at 20 million a year, 20.5. So by the time that we give Amon-Ra St. Brown a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL contract, it's going to be a lot higher than $20 million a year. So you could be looking at so Roquan Smith just signed a 5-year, $100 million contract. You might be looking at something like that, or probably
more.
5 years, $125 million, something like that.
Yeah.
North Carolina wide receiver has been mid. Which one? Diami Brown, the Washington guy.
Yeah, he's not going to reset the market because I think Chase will probably do that. But he's
No.
going to be right behind him, right?
Right. I think that he's going to be, I think that like when the day that he actually signs his contract on that day, he'll probably be like the 10th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. If he has 2 more years like the one that he just had, then yeah. Well, he has to play behind Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin and now Jahan Dotson. So I mean, like that's pretty stiff competition. He's a super cool number 4 option.
The thing
They
that
will be able to keep both of them, Mark.
you think so?
So I mean, like this is what I'm talking about. Like what Mark just brought up is emblematic of the problem that I think they're going to have in 2 years, which is why I'm being such a crab ass about the salary cap right now. It like when I'm like, well, you can't re-sign DeAndre Swift, you can't, like we should get rid of Jared Goff, like we can't. It's because you have these guys that are going to need that money.
Yeah.
And like you can't just cut them all in the year you need to sign them.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, when you and I were talking, like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams have completely different skill sets. You know, clearly they want both of those skill sets on the team, but like you're going to need to make a choice, like, right? Like, so if you, I mean, like when they might look to re-sign DJ Chark this season, like they signed him for a 1-year, $10 million deal. If they signed him for 3 years, let's say $33 million or something like that, like roughly the same amount of cost, then you could re-sign St. Brown, go into the next season with St. Brown on his new extension. It'd be the last year of Chark, and then you can roll some of Chark money into Jameson Williams, but he's going to probably get a contract that exceeds St. Brown's, assuming he is what we think he is.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't plan for that. I mean, you have to start planning for that shit right now. You can't wait until you can't do. It's either you plan for it right now, or you're the New Orleans Saints, and you just constantly you work so much restructured money into your cap that you just kick that thing down the road for 8 years, and then you have to like let go of your whole team, like they're going to have to do this offseason, just to get back to zero.
So one of the things that I found super interesting were some of these other categories. When I compared Amon-Ra St. Brown to those guys, it blew my mind that he is within 1% of the same contested catch percentage as Jamar Chase. Like when I think of Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't think of the guy that's going to be like the killer contested catch guy, but he is right up there with Chase. He's better than Waddle, and he's slightly behind Devonta Smith. And I'm just like, that kind of blew my mind that he was also that guy. Now, granted, it's not, I mean, 40% isn't huge, and you got some others, you know, in the 50s and 60s, but that's just, I mean, he's mainly a slot guy.
So, yeah, and this is one of the big reasons why I love PFF and the way they do things. Like if you go to ESPN, it's receptions, yards, touchdowns, yada yada yada. But if you go to PFF, it's like there's these other things that help tell you things like how deep, you know, average depth of target. Like what are you looking at? So like right there, like I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, his route tree is half as deep as Jamar Chase. Like that is significant. They are not running the same route tree. You know, so you know, what do you do with that? You know, but his route tree is the same as Jalen Waddle.
Yep.
You know, as far as depth of target is concerned. You know, they're probably running a lot of like, you know, out routes and, you know, slants maybe or something, you know, stuff like that. Stuff that's like 7 yards off the line of scrimmage, which is why, you know, he can catch 100 balls in a year.
Yeah.
Because Jared Goff can see that within a split second of the, you know, the snap is whether or not, you know, he's got outside leverage or the linebackers are playing over or if it's a zone versus man, whatever the case may be. So, I mean, there you go. But like the point is like what we're doing with all of these stats is, you know, Brad Holmes found a guy that, you know, plus or minus a couple of things is competing with production wise the guys that went 5, 6, and 11 or 10th or whatever it was in the same class. And like St. Brown loves to say, he was the 16th wide receiver taken or 17th. And he knows the names of all the guys in front of him because it's like he felt that he can compete with them, and he's proven it through 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa, hang on.
Gnomes we trust.
One Pride is reporting that Ben Johnson is staying in Detroit. What's your source?
Ben Johnson has.
I'm off to Twitter, the most reliable news source in America. Tom Pelissero, Ben Johnson informed interested teams he is staying in Detroit.
Yay!
Wow.
There's nobody happier in the world than Jared Goff right now.
Has to be. Jared Goff should take some of his money and just like, hey, Ben, do you want a boat? How about a fucking trip around the world? Whatever you want, dude. Thank you. Like, that's
like giving his offensive line like gold watches and shit like that, right?
That's great. Thank you, One Pride. Excellent tip, man. That's fantastic. And great news for Detroit, right?
Yeah.
So this is the hopeful thing that I have about what the culture is building in Detroit, right? So if I don't hear something about how they're going to give him another $1 million or something, like they're reworking his deal in order to help incentivize him to stay. If he's just staying to stay, what is that? I mean, what a message that he's sending to the rest of the NFL. Like, hey, I want to be here in Detroit. I had head coaching offers.
Yeah.
I could have been the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. I might have been the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Like, there's only 32 of those jobs. And if he's turning down head coaching jobs to be the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions,
Yeah, it also goes back to like Anzalone. There were 3 guys that I know, Anzalone being one of them.
Anzalone and Kaminsky.
They all said, I will take less. I want to bring me back. I will take less. You don't see that in the NFL, especially with some of these guys that are maybe bubble spots. I mean, I don't say bubble spots, but like they could easily get a free agent contract somewhere else. But they're also not like the greatest people, the greatest at their position. You're not going to get like a Devontae Adams say, hey, I'll play for 10 million. No, they're going to say, give me 30 or I'll go to someone that will. But there are guys out there that are good, sure contracts somewhere else saying, I want to stay here. Bring me back because I think this is special. And that's, to me, that's one of those big things that Brad Holmes and Coach Campbell are doing differently. That's why this is not the same old Lions.
So it looks like Justin Rogers is saying, confirming that plan is for Ben Johnson to stay with the Lions for the upcoming season.
So we got at least another year.
At least one more year. So let's make that count, I guess, right?
Yep.
Restore the roar. So let's finish tonight with, oh man, that's some pretty good news to finish on.
Yeah. Well, do we want to do that deeper dive into the tight ends and running backs?
Well, let's try it. I had everything I needed to set it up, and then I left it at my job.
Oh, for the love of God, Drew.
So I was doing it on lunch and my breaks. So for any of my coworkers that are not watching, I'm certain. Yeah, but they may not be attractive, but there's 32 of them on Earth. Indianapolis might have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Who knows? I kind of like what Houston's doing, but they're still so far away that I don't think. They're not. They might win 5 games next year, and that'll be a win. So, anyways, let's talk about the roster, the current state of the roster. This is pop a bottle good news, for real. Yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm super happy. Like I'm smiling. So, excellent news. Brad Gnomes is stoked over there. So let's talk about the tight end class. So unfortunately, I don't have a graphic to show you like Mike does. Mike's great with graphics. But we had, I'm not going to talk about TJ Hawkinson because he's not on the roster at the end of the season. But let's talk about the 3 tight ends that the Lions do have at the end of the season, which is, oh, look at you. Please make that bigger.
I gotta.
Control and then the rolly ball on your mouse.
It's not. Why is it?
There should be. You see where it says 100% up there in the upper left hand corner next to the paintbrush. To the left, there it is. Go ahead.
There we go.
There we go. So like this is a roster that I put together. Can you click on 23 roster? Yeah, so that's terrible. But like
this was not your updated version.
It's not my updated version, but like this kind of gives you an idea of who's on the roster. So James Mitchell is the only tight end who is on contract for next season. So he'd be going into his second year, first full year of the off-season training under his belt, that kind of stuff. I believe we have Brock Wright on an what is it? An EFRA, like what is that? Extended rights free agency or something like that.
Oh, yep. Basically a restricted free agent.
Yeah. So I think it's overwhelmingly likely that Brock Wright is back in Detroit next season and probably for a couple of years. I wouldn't mind seeing something like, I think he's only making like $1 million this year. So like if you wanted to give him something like 3 years, $10 million, I'd be thrilled. And then you at least have a solid player there, and we're going to talk about like who's going to be the starter. So I think you re-sign Brock Wright. So the question for me is, do you re-sign Shane Zylstra? My voice broke. I'm 40. So let's talk a little bit about like the snap counts and how these guys were used after TJ Hawkinson was traded. So everybody saw their numbers go up. Let's start with James Mitchell. So he's the rookie. He had 11 targets. He had 11 catches. So that's cool. He caught all of his targets for 113 yards and 1 touchdown. He came in with a starter's grade at the end of the season per PFF, and he had a very good receiving grade of 76.3 for his final receiving mark for the season. That's only on 11 catches though. So I mean, let's take that for what you will. Didn't have a drop. He averaged just over 10 yards per catch. And I think he's probably in line here for a little bit more work when it comes to the 2023 season. So almost all of these guys had the same kind of distribution for their snap counts, which was they're almost all of them are 3-to-1 ratio snaps as an inline blocker, as opposed to being lined up in the slot or being lined up out wide. So they all had some snaps at every one of those different alignments, but overwhelmingly they're all inline tight ends, which makes sense, right, for what the Lions want to do. So if it's me, and let's talk about Brock Wright real quick because he's kind of the jewel of this group. Brock Wright did not have he had almost like the worst grade about all these guys, unfortunately. Yeah, he had the worst grade, which is weird. But he had 23 targets for 18 catches, 216 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I think Hawk had 6. Take that, TJ. So, but he is your quintessential, like, do everything back or do everything tight end. And I think the team benefits from having him on it. He's one of the closer things we have to a veteran on this team, to be honest. He is only going into his 3rd season, and I think like this would be a time to kind of capitalize on Brock Wright's value. Shane Zylstra, on the other hand, is a little bit of a different story. He had 13 targets, he had 11 catches, so pretty similar to James Mitchell. 60 yards, but he had 4 touchdowns, including, remember, he had that 3-touchdown game. Was it against Minnesota near the end of the year?
I don't remember who was it against, but yes, he had a monster game.
And so that was pretty much his season. And so he had an overall grade of 59.2, which is below average, but like considering the amount of usage that he got, it's kind of right in line with what I would expect for him. So to me, the answer is you have Mitchell under contract. You're going to give him more work next season. Bring back Wright. He was your number one option. And then when you go into the draft, you at least have players there, and then you just wait and see how the draft falls. And you say, like, does someone like Mayer from Notre Dame, is he there for you at 18? Maybe we should think about taking him. Or like, can you get a Darnell Washington from Georgia, who is my absolute prospect crush for the Lions this season?
He's such a big guy.
He's huge. 6'7", 265. Oh, like it's like having another offensive lineman just on the field. Like, will he be there with the Lions' first pick in the second round? Like, do you want to invest another draft pick in a tight end? I mean, they could also go out into free agency and I think very easily upgrade over Shane Zylstra and probably Brock Wright. Like, will Hayden Hurst be available? You know, somebody like that. Some kind of like, was it Tyler Higbee, who's the tight end for the Rams? Like, is there a Tyler Higbee-esque player in free agency that's not going to break the bank that you can bring in, who's going to be a fit with this team and like share the workload? Or do you want to add a different skill set, you know, via the draft? So I don't know. What I would do is re-sign Brock Wright to something like 3 years, $11 million, something like that, and have the two of them. And then worst case scenario, if like free agency doesn't go your way, if the draft doesn't go your way, you can have a camp battle and you might just get another version of Shane Zylstra or Shane Zylstra, you know, to come back and be on the roster. And then you're no worse off at the position group. So, and we get a drink of water. So good. But that's tight ends. Like, to be honest, I think the Lions are heading in the right way with this position group. Young guys, cheap guys, pretty much all do the same thing. They're completely interchangeable. Now that the stress is gone from Ben Johnson's impending departure, that's excellent. I'd love a good night's sleep too. So I think all these guys I think the Lions are waiting basically to see which one of these guys distinguishes themselves. And then they'll probably reward whomever it is with a better contract. But I wouldn't be surprised to see them upgrade in the top 100 at this position, especially if like Mayer falls or Darnell Washington is there. Like, it's a relatively deep class of tight ends this year in this. So like, if they want a straight up pass catcher, which I doubt, but like they could get a Luke Musgrave in the third round maybe, or a Dalton Kincaid or somebody like that. So like, I think that the options are there for them. And so like, let's wrap up tonight. We're going to go a little bit over with the running backs. So we're going to talk about 4 running backs. Give Brock 9 for 3 and then throw Zylstra 3 for 2. And then at least you are confident that all 3 are able to do what you want. Then do like they did with Brock, UDFA. Okay. That's a solid plan. I like that idea. You know, basically any plan that doesn't involve us throwing a lot of money at the position, I'm going to be on board with, and that certainly qualifies. So excellent. But let's finish up with running backs. So Jamal Williams, right?
Yep.
He had 262 carries for 1,066 yards rushing, scored 17 touchdowns, broke Barry Sanders' single season rushing record for touchdowns. He had 4.1 yards per carry. He came in with a 73.5 overall grade and a 75.6 rushing grade, and he just does not catch the ball out of the backfield. That is not a big part of his game. But like, this is the emotional, vocal leader of the team now, and I think he said that he likes being here. I can't imagine that they don't want him here. And to me, this is a match made in heaven, and I cannot foresee a set of circumstances where he is not going to get a second contract.
Yeah, I agree.
And so like, and he is making $4.3 million this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a second contract that's multiple years between $6 and $8 million. So like,
as long as we're not going to go and do the whole Ezekiel Elliott, oh my gosh, he did 17 he broke Barry Sanders' franchise record. We need to throw throw a Brinks truck at him and spend $15 million on him a year. I'm cool with re-signing him for 6 or 8, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're, Ben Johnson's just announced that he's staying, you're going to be in the same system. If you said something like $20 million for 3 years or something like that, I don't know that he can turn it down. It's a significant pay increase, and he gets to stay here.
Yeah.
And
I think I extend him for 3 years. I'm just thinking,
I don't know why not.
The shelf life of a running back is.
He's 27.
That's my point. The shelf life of a running back doesn't tend to last as long because they get beat up so much. They get hit so hard and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
I think. Well, I don't have a problem with it, to be honest. I mean, he's 27. He's very clearly in great shape.
Yeah. Give the first 2 years guaranteed, the third year not, kind of deal.
Basically, like, you're not going to pay him, it's not like the overall contract divided by 3, which is always what gets reported in the press. It's going to be something like, here's some guaranteed money up front, first year, some in the second year, almost none in the third year. And like, it's basically like, yeah, you're on the roster for 3 years, but we can get rid of you in year 3 without even really thinking about it.
10-7-3.
Something like that. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. And that's pretty much what they did with Tracy. Tracy Walker, except they reversed it. I think that was so that they had cap room this year. They went 3-11, 8 or like 12 or something like that. Like, he got $8 million a year, and it's he gets like an $8 million pay bump this season.
Hey, he earned it this year. All 3 games that he played.
Yeah, I hope that he's all right going into camp.
Yeah, I mean, if not, we've got Kirby Joseph.
He's going to be the free safety for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Jamal. I think he's back. So here's what I think that does to DeAndre Swift. Swift carried the ball 99 times for 542 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5.5 yards per carry. That's pretty good. Overall, he had an overall score of 77.8. That's really good. He had an 82.7 rushing grade, which is really good, and he had a 66 receiving grade, which is less than I thought it would be. But he had, in addition to that, come on now, 63 targets, 48 catches, another 389 yards receiving, and another 3 touchdowns. So he had 8 touchdowns and something like almost 1,000 all-purpose yards. But I think he clearly is the number 2 now to Jamal Williams. And if you give 3 years, $20 million or whatever it was to Jamal Williams, you're cutting DeAndre Swift after his rookie deal's up, or you're letting him walk in free agency. You're not giving him a second contract.
Right.
So, like, I don't see how they don't
and then
bring
get a
back
comp pick because someone's going to overpay him.
Right. Exactly. So like, I think that he's probably done in Detroit if they bring back Jamal Williams on a multi-year deal, which I think is likely. And so then you're talking about who's the third running back, because Williams, Justin Jackson, and Craig Reynolds are all of their contracts are up. So you need to bring back at least somebody of that group.
And you're probably drafting mid-round or mid-draft as well, like a mid-round draft pick, right?
We are talking about a third-string running back. I don't know that you need to draft a mid-round. I mean, you might be talking about drafting a mid-round running back in 2024 to replace Swift, but I don't know that you need to do that a year ahead of time.
Yeah. No, that's what I was talking about. Not this coming draft, but like, because we've got Swift for this next year. It's going to be that following draft year, right?
Right. So if we talk about Justin Jackson real quickly, he had 42 carries for 170 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 4 yards a carry, 58.6 overall grade. He was a better rusher than he was a receiver. He still had 12 catches for 100 yards and 1 touchdown. It's pretty good. And then Craig Reynolds, who I can never remember his name, had I always call him Corey for some reason. He had 23 rushes for 100 yards, no touchdowns, 4.4 yards per carry. A little bit better score, 68.9, and he's a better rusher than he is a receiver as well, but he had 9 catches for 100 yards and no touchdowns. So, like, I think the big difference to me between these two guys is that I think Justin plays a lot more on special teams, on, like, kick coverage, and he can actually – I think he's actually, like – isn't he the punt returner, the backup punt returner?
Behind Khalif Raymond?
Behind Khalif Raymond?
Yeah, he might be.
So, like, what I'm thinking is re-sign Jamal Williams to a multi-year deal, re-sign Justin Jackson to a 1-year deal, go into the season Williams, Swift, Jackson, and get a UDFA in camp.
And for the love of God, can we get rid of Kabinda?
You can't. Not this year.
What?
Because we'll look him up on Over the Cap. So, like, you don't save money cutting him until, like, the last year of his deal, if that. So, I mean, like, it's not like you – I mean, like, my rule for this is that if you don't save money by cutting a player, then you don't cut him.
Or we'd save $2 million for Kabinda.
Is that the savings, or is that the?
Yeah, this is the dead money, right? And this is the cap savings.
This would but like, let's scroll up a little bit. So this is the 2023 season. So the league year is going to change, and then we're going to play that year on this deal. So what you're looking at, these numbers right now, are if we're a year ahead from where we are right now. So, like, if we just finished the upcoming season, you could cut him and then save that money.
So is this the one that we should be looking at?
Is this 2022?
No, this is 2024. 2022 is already gone.
Right. So, like, go and click on his name, and you'll get a breakdown of his entire contract. Yeah. So, like, 2022, we no longer, those things are gone, right? So that was
no guaranteed money next year.
Right. So, like, the only thing I like about Kabinda that I think is going to keep him on the team is there's 2 reasons. The coaches just talk about him like he's like the second coming of Jesus Christ. And then the second thing is they think that they need it, that he plays well on special teams. And, like,
hey, Drew,
what?
Breaking news.
What's up?
A6 just jumped in and wanted to make sure that we knew Ben Johnson told the Lions and the other teams he will return in 2023. Come on, A6, where you been, buddy? We were talking about this like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, my gosh.
Man, that guy.
Hey, but I appreciate you being in the chat, A6.
Yes.
We're not good enough friends for me to admonish you the way that Mike just did.
I know. That's the only way I can do it if I didn't know. Right. But One Pride did let us know about 20 minutes ago. Oh, putting the kids to bed.
That's important.
I see priorities.
Oh, stop it. Who wouldn't take my call on their lunch break because they were, quote unquote, working at their job? Shut up.
Yeah.
Don't give him a hard time. So,
I won't forgive you, A6.
Yeah. So I don't personally want a fullback or an H-back or whatever position Jason Kabinda. Like, he gets like 10 snaps a game. But, like, I also don't think that you should allocate that much money for what he does. So, like, do I want him off the team? Yeah. Am I nickel and diming? Yeah.
I would totally cut him and save that $2 million.
And it may come to that because, I mean, if the cap does end up at $225 million with the new TV money, which the analysts are expecting to be right around 225, they're going to be fine to go into next season with more cap space than they have this year. So that $15 million, that's based off of a $210 million cap, right? Yeah. Top 51 is 210.
Yeah.
So that's right around what we'll have. So, like, 210 plus 15, 225. So,
yeah. And then we'll probably We'll get another 10 million here.
Yes, he's
Right,
the
where we
first
going?
cut.
We will probably.
I would
save
cut
another-
Charles Harris second.
Yep, $4 million there. So now we're saving 14 more million.
So the only other cut that I really think is worth talking about at this time would be Vitae, which is 6.5. But then you have to have a replacement in line for him.
Yeah.
And Evan Brown, who was the primary interior offensive lineman backup this season, is also an unrestricted free agent. So if you are going to cut Vitae, then you need to address that, whether that's in free agency or the draft. And so, like, while I think that a guard in either round 2 or 3 would be a decent investment, somebody like Jarrett Patterson from Notre Dame, who I think would be an amazing player next to Penei Sewell, I think that would probably be the direction that I'm heading, but I don't think that you cut him. Well, we don't pick. I don't think we have a pick in round 4 or 5. A6. So, like, which I don't expect you to know that, but like, there is a huge gap between the top 100 and when the Lions pick again. So I think it's like our last pick is like in the early 80s, and then it's like 160 or something that we pick at. So, exactly. So to me, like, when we are talking about this upcoming class, we are talking about we are going to pick 5 times in the top 100, and those should probably be the guys you're expecting to contribute to this squad. So 81 over. See that? Oh, okay. So I was a little bit off. It goes to 149. So I was 20 picks off. 40 picks off. Whatever. Thank you, Michael.
Yep. Hey, anything.
Well, Jonah Jackson was a 3rd round pick, A6. So good call there. You know, and like, to be honest, that's a really decent round to, you know, get a quality starter. Maybe not like a Pro Bowler, but like a quality starter. This makes me look bad, Mike. Take this out of here. Like, I'll do for next week. I'll do an updated one with, right. So was Warford, but that was a Bob Quinn pick, and we don't talk about Bob Quinn. So even though he drafted guards pretty well. So, but like, yeah, I do think that you should be looking at something like 6th overall. Should we take a quarterback? 18 overall. I would almost lock that into a corner. And then it's like, should we take a tight end early 2nd round? What about a linebacker with the second round pick? And then what guard is going to be there in round 3? And if you do that, at least you're replacing some of those players with fresh contracts. Right, Michael?
That is accurate. Yeah,
the interaction between us is why people show up for this.
That's true. I mean, it's mostly me, but
it's a lot of it's you. Yeah.
No, it's mostly you, Drew. I'll admit to it.
Well, you are the great and powerful Oz behind the scenes here. So how about next week, Mike? I mean, we're going to do next week. We're going to go into another position group on offense. We're going to end with quarterback.
Yep.
But next week, why don't we do another position group at least, and we'll do like another mock. Okay. And we'll take some of what we talked about from this podcast, and we'll say, okay, last week we referenced the fact that, like, what if we're given a God offer for 6? Like, and then what if the draft breaks in a way, and none of the simulators are going to break in the way that we had discussed, but like, what if we did a mock where we could do all the picks, for all the teams, and maybe at least through 18. And then we could see like, what happens if worst case scenario, best case scenario, you just run to the podium and you'd be like, Will Anderson, welcome to Detroit, or whatever the case might be. Right? But like,
you get your hand slapped again for running to the podium.
Oh my God. If Will Anderson is on the board, or Jalen Carter, or anybody, like, the league office can yell at me all fucking day. I don't give a shit. Like, be like, oh, you want to yell at me? And I have to get slapped on the hand because I got Jalen Carter to line up next to Aiden Hutchinson. I don't care. Like
yeah, find me.
let the Tennessee Titans be responsible for going deeper into the class and let you have your advertising time. Shut up. So, but let's look at worst case scenarios, because anything but the worst case scenario is going to be an overwhelmingly positive thing for this team, and we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
So
right, let's do that.
What our options are at 6 next week.
So position groups, is there? So we've done tight end and running back because there's not a lot of those guys, and we could kind of mush them together into one. So we've got offensive line, we've got wide receiver, and we got quarterback.
We
want to do like tackles. Oh, yeah, we're going to end with quarterback. Do you want to do tackles? Do we want to do the entire offensive line? Maybe we do tackles, and then we do the interior offensive line as a separate show, and then wide receivers, and then quarterback? Or do we want to just do fuck
what
it?
Mike's taking forever to ask is what you guys want to see next.
Yes. What do you want to see next time?
And while they're typing that in, I'll answer Funky's question. Like, just because you have James Houston, that is not a reason to not draft Will Anderson.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I very much am surprised and happy with James Houston, and I am cutting Charles Harris to give him more snaps. But if Will Anderson is on the board at 6, you don't even question it. You just go take Will Anderson, and and you're just thrilled about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you
have rotational. It's not like Houston's not going to see play.
James Houston can still get 100 more snaps than last year, and have Anderson be the starter. I'm fine with it.
Because you could cut Romeo Okwara at that point.
It'd
save even more money.
We are going to have a special guest we're going to have a special guest in 2 weeks. Then we're going to talk about some of that a little bit more. But he's the reason I bring it up is that he's a huge Okwara fan.
Oh, poor guy.
And I'm like, the dude missed 25 games over the last 2 seasons.
Out of 30,
you're paid him. You're paid him. He's the third highest player on the team. And he had one nice game where he had a couple sacks or whatever, and I haven't looked at what he's done since, but I don't care. I just don't think that he's going to be the long-term answer for the Aiden Hutchinson's tag team partner. Before we go, did you see the stat? Was it you that sent me the stat that Aiden Hutchinson was double teamed the same amount as fucking Myles Garrett this year?
It was absurd. Let me see if I can find it, and so I can throw it on the where the hell did it go? You keep talking while I find it.
Okay, I will. So where am I on Breesy? A6, I'm going to go in kind of the order that they got. First come, first served here. But I'm fine with Brian Breesy. I think other wrong Lions fans, will not like the pick because he was coming off of an ACL this year, and it's going to be Brad Holmes drafts hurt players, and what happens if he gets hurt? And I'm like, find me a player that isn't hurt. Shut up. It's just a stupid narrative. And so I would be totally fine drafting Brian Breesy at 6. In the situation that Mike and I were discussing, he was not available. But I think that he's in line for something like a top 10 selection. Funky says he's not a fan of Anderson. He watched a few games. He was meh. And he also says, I want Gonzalez at 6 right now, expecting Carter to be gone. And to be honest, if there's no other option and you can't trade back or whatever, I'm totally fine with taking Gonzalez at 6. I think that would be fantastic. Mike, that is too small for anyone to see it.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. Make it bigger. You can't. So anyways, let's just close it down. So what that is showing down here there it is. Good job, buddy. So there's Aiden in the lower right-hand corner. And the graph is trying to indicate that he is double teamed on about 30% of his plays. So 35%. So if you scroll up, this is slightly different. So Nick Bosa is the only other player that gets double teamed at the same rate that Aiden Hutchinson got double teamed this year.
Oh, this is the pass. Yeah, this is pass rush win rate.
Yeah. So the only thing that Aiden needs, I mean, like the thing, if I was looking at this graph, this example here, the thing that I would be looking at if I was watching film as Aiden Hutchinson this year is like, okay, well, let's come up with a plan for me to help start defeating some of these double teams. Number one, it starts with who you drafted at 6. Because like you need to get him a tag team partner on the defensive line that's going to cause pressure. So
this was not the final numbers, by the way. I'm trying to find the thing with the final numbers.
Okay, great. You do that. So let's see. First MDs normally aren't great, but I know nothing about the kid. So I mean, like, so here's the thing about defensive tackle. Like, people are on like forums or other like Lions media people. They're talking about like signing Daron Payne. You're not going to outbid the Bears for Daron Payne. The Chicago Bears could spend $50 million in free agency before they have more money than the Detroit Lions have to go into free agency with. And that's if we cut all these people that we were talking about earlier in the chat, you know, Vaitai, Okwara, Harris, whatever, you know, Brockers. So there's that. I mean, and like you can always hope to luck into a guy second, third round, and I think there's going to be options there for the Lions if they want to get a running buddy for Aiden Hutchinson. But like I don't even know. I very much do not think that trading up in the first round, especially into the top 15, the top 10 is warranted because it's so expensive to do. So I don't think they're going to get Jalen Carter, which would be the absolute best option for them. Like, Carter's fantastic. Like, no one doubts that. And outside of that, you're going to have to take a dude with some flaws. Yeah, so there's the chart.
This was the final numbers on Next Gen Stats and the ESPN Analytics. Hutchinson was over here. Garrett was they basically tied for the highest double team rate.
Yeah.
And Hutchinson was higher on the pass rush win rate, but dropped as they started doing more and more double teams because we had nobody on the other end.
Right. Which is why I think that like James Houston was able to get to 8 sacks was because it's like, who are you gonna block? Would you rather have 2 guys on Hutch or block the 6th rounder? Well, he pretty much started proving you wrong immediately, but like you're still going to block Aiden Hutchinson first. And I think this is the argument that I've been making is that like Hutch is probably never going to be a Myles Garrett, but he's good enough that players are going to, like, teams are going to scheme up how to stop him. And that's going to open the door for somebody else. And like, if you get a player like a Will Anderson, Funky, across, and then it's like, you're going to give that guy one-on-one coverage against a right tackle or whatever most of the time, I think they're going to be screwed. So, I mean, like, I do think that defensive tackle is the way to go, but I'm not going to pass up a Will Anderson if he's there.
Yeah.
So, and
compared to the 2 guys, Trayvon Walker,
we don't even need to talk about
right. Higher win rate, fewer double teams, and then Thibodeau had a higher win rate, but far fewer double teams.
He's also got Dexter Lawrence,
which is why he's not getting double teamed because the other side of the line is.
Yeah, they have another DT. I can't remember his name. He used to play for the Jets, I believe. And then BJ Ojulari is over there on the other side, or Aziz Ojulari is over on the other side. Like, he has competent other defensive linemen. I mean, like, and we have McNeil, and like, I mean, but everybody else has been kind of like, there's probably something here. Like, Pascal flashed, Okwara came back and had a multiple sack game. Houston came out of nowhere, but like Charles Harris did nothing. Austin Bryant did nothing. Julian Okwara did nothing. Like, these are all guys that I'm like, you need to really be worried about your roster spot heading into the 2023 season, because I think that they're still going to invest in this position group.
Yeah.
So Mike, I'm just gonna make a decision for everybody here. We're gonna do wide receivers next year because
All right.
it's gonna be real quick.
All right.
So
We'll do wide receivers.
So we'll do wide receiver deep dive. We'll do a mock draft. Mike will come up with something that I think will be. He brought us this thought experiment, which took 30 minutes today. So we're guaranteed to have him bring something good to the table. But
surprise to be determined later.
Right. So, but if you have questions, scenarios,
thought experiments,
email us at casualgmpodcast@gmail.com. We also have a Twitter feed at casualgmpodcast on Twitter. So if you have a thought midweek or you see something interesting, like in a mock draft or whatever, and you want us to discuss it, throw us a quick email. We would love to see you guys participate, even outside of chat.
Yeah, or if you do your own mock, you're like, "Wow, this was
killer. Yeah."
Shoot us a screenshot
that
of it.
Would be cool. That would be really cool. So,
and as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Right, and tell your friends. We're getting close. We're at 46 subscribers.
4 more, 46. And I changed the hat.
Yep, I'm loving it. So we're getting close. So tell your friends. And until then, keep it casual.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Peace.